Hi everyone, I'm Tally, this is Farrell, and we are bored of it. And today we're going to be previewing Sweetlands. Sweetlands is a heavy complex Euro for 1 to 4 players with a bit of a whimsical, cutesy theme. The king of Sweetlands, he's a bit sick from basically eating too much junk. He's addicted to sugar, he loves tiramisu, he loves cake, he loves sweets, macaroons. So basically he's looking for someone to take over the title. So you have to prove yourself that you are worthy of that by basically going up some tracks and building some buildings.
There are a lot of tracks in this game. So it's got a quite interesting action selection system where you're given a hand of candy people and you can play them for the action on them, or you can spend them to take actions on the main board. And you're basically you're going to be doing a lot of almost worker placement in some ways, but also city building, route building, and moving up a lot of tracks, generating a lot of bonuses. Everything you do gives you bonuses. So just to note before we get into it and what we think, because we're going to tell you about how amazing this game is. This is a prototype that we're provided by the publisher, so it's not finalized. Things will likely change between what we've played and the final product. Maybe good, maybe bad. So please be aware of that. And also know that there's no payment for this. We don't take any money for anything we do. We at most get a review copy, or in the case of this, a final copy. So just to avoid any allegations of bias. But let's go into how you play and why we think it's so damn great. Sweetlands is played over 5 rounds, and the bulk of what you'll be doing each round is taking actions on this main board here. So at the start of each round, you're going to draw a number of Candy Citizen cards, and these are essentially, you can think of them like action chits for that round, because you can either play the candy people for their effect on the card, and that will cost you a bit of gold, or you can spend that card to take an action over here. And the actions get more expensive in terms of the cards you have to spend the more times they've been used, and eventually they could be shut off. So that's kind of how you go about taking the manual active actions. But generally what you're doing is you're going to be moving up tracks and you're going to be building your city, as you see here. So the first thing you do is you place your terrain tiles, then you place roads alongside them, which allow them to flip. And then once they're flipped, you can build the buildings on them. And then you want to kind of organize your buildings ideally into distinct cities where they have unique buildings in groups of 3s, as that is another way to score points in this game. And you're going to score points from almost every aspect of it. But one thing that's interesting is you have to put yourself in for those points. So over here, you have the prosperity track, and moving along these tracks, there's 6 different ones. And the further you are along, the more points you'll score for a specific element. So you can score for on these prosperity tracks for the amount of tiles you have, for the amount of roads you have, for the amount of buildings you have. You can also score for the amount of these little cookie rabbits you've managed to place in your city, for how well you move up the industry track and gain points from it, and for how many cards you can automate. Because if you decide to play a Candy Citizen card, you can also add them to your player board, and then when you trigger a certain kind of industry action, they will produce everything that you've kind of attached to them, so you can get a big payout of different bonuses. And this is also a game that is very much about bonuses. Pretty much everything you're doing gains bonuses. A lot of times you place terrain tiles, you get a bonus. When you flip them, you get a bonus. When you build buildings, you get a bonus for building the building and for placing it on your map. You're also going to be focused on increasing your income. You have a variety of resources that you need to pay to pretty much do anything. It's a fairly mid-level tight game in terms of you always desperately in need of some sort of resource. And you can make your income go up. And there's a few different tracks you also will be keeping in mind. You've got a food track and an industry track. They both give you ways to get points and bonuses. But that is actually, at its core, it's very straightforward. It's just that there's a lot going on and a lot of different routes to take, a lot of different strings to pull on. And when you get to the end, you will score for a lot of different things. There's a big long list. So it's one of those type of games where you get points everywhere.
For us, the best games are the ones where it's really, really tricky to make decisions turn to turn because all of the options are equally beneficial or interesting. And Sweetlands is absolutely characterized by this. When you flip over your terrain tiles, you can either choose to go up on your resource income tracks or the prosperity tracks for future points. So already that is pretty tricky because in the beginning, maybe you want to go for resource income, but actually going up on the prosperity tracks will safeguard you for future point scoring. Do you want to use your citizen card and play it for the benefits that it gives you, or should you use it to take an action? Should you focus on building out your terrain tiles and your road system, or building buildings on the tiles that have already been flipped and focus on creating cities? Sweetlands is just completely full of these very, very tough decisions, and the core action selection system is very interesting because of the fact that the cards that you can play for benefits are also the ones that you need to discard to do your actions. And they get more expensive and you need to discard more cards when they've been used. So it could kind of push you in a different direction to take some different actions. We also think the push-pull of what buildings you build is very interesting because the more that you get out of a same type, the better the rewards are. But then it's harder to create cities which need a group of unique buildings, and the cities can actually get you a fair few points. So again, another quite agonizing decision. We really love all of the different rewards that you get for the different buildings that you can build. And what's particularly nice is a handful of the rewards are dependent on the character that you choose in your player board. So a little bit of asymmetry there. This game is just so engaging to navigate. There are so many different elements, so many different options for players to lean into, so many different strings you can pull and mechanisms to play with. It really makes you want to keep coming back to it. I always end every game just wanting to go again because I want to maybe try out playing around with some different mechanisms, try leaning into a certain element, try going up some different tracks, maybe ignoring something that I previously put a lot of focus on. There's just so much to do that it really, really makes it quite addictive, to be honest, and it makes you want to keep coming back to play. And all of this is supported by a surprisingly large and varied deck of citizen cards, which again, add a little bit of asymmetry there. And all of this is just culminating in creating something that you just want to keep doing repeat plays of.
If you're a fan of big, heavy, complex games where you're engaged for the entire time because all you have in front of you is agonizing choices, you never have quite enough of what you need, you're always scrapping and scrambling to get that next thing out or to take that next action or to pay for something, then this is 100% a game for you. It's one of those games where the joy of it is just playing it and working your way through all of its bells and whistles and navigating its different tracks and different bonuses and just being very fulfilled. And it also has the added pleasure that you get to build a 3D kingdom in front of you. You actually have something at the end of the game for all your hard work to visually look at, which looks beautiful, like all of the production and the components. There's just so much to keep players interested because you do want to do everything. You want to go up every track. You want to compete in every area. And it's always really interesting to try and decide between just what you want to do and where you want to go. And it's something that's just really captivated both of us. Moving on to things to be aware of, things we maybe didn't like so much, which there is very few things, but one thing to know is this is a big, heavy, complex Euro. It's going to take up a lot of table space. It's going to take up a lot of time. Your first play is going to go over long because there are so many different things to interact with that you'll be constantly resting the rulebook. But the core actions and what you're doing kind of turn to turn is very intuitive. You pick it up very quickly. The symbology is great to help you along. It's just that there are actually, in terms of continued play, there are some aspects that you definitely will need aid cards for, player aid cards, which are supposedly going to be put in the final product. And that's just like the income and when you pass, where you can get income or score from multiple different ways, and sometimes it will matter what order you take it in. So it's good to have a reminder of that. Then there are a few elements that we found a bit idiosyncratic, where we couldn't quite see what they were doing and would ideally rather them not be in the game. The first being there's these harbors on your player map, on your kingdom, where essentially you're tasked with connecting all 4 of them up to your capital city with hex tiles. And if you don't do that, for each one you don't do, you kind of get more and more and more negative points exponentially. But if you do them all, you only get a paltry number of positive points. And this doesn't interact with anything else in the game. It's also the only place you get negative points in the game. And what it does is it becomes a chore for players because there's no interest there. You're doing it so you don't get punished. And you're taking away resources from places where it would be more interesting and fun to use them. So that's something, probably the main thing I didn't quite agree with in the game. Then there's this rule about drawing citizen cards and how you always have to keep one over in between turns. And I just can't see why this rule exists, because it doesn't affect gameplay in any way. And I don't know why they just don't let players spend the cards how they like. And it's more because it's just another rule in a game with a lot of rules for players to try and remember and mess up. Then moving on to some stuff that maybe is a bit more worrisome, you could say. I do think there are some issues of balance we've noticed in the prototype. The citizen cards in particular, the costs don't tend to align so much with the rewards you're getting. Sometimes low cards that are low cost have great rewards, and cards which are high cost and then require you to also spend resources give you an average reward. There's some talk about the characters, some of them maybe being overpowered. And I know the publisher has also addressed this and said they've noticed that some might be more powerful than others, and they're going to adjust. And they've also said that in terms of all this, they're going to be looking at it and adjusting and tweaking, until basically it's ready to go to print, because they have almost everything except for that down. So I do have a lot of faith that these things will be adjusted in the final product. Final thoughts. This game is absolutely brilliant. I think if it wasn't for the fact that it's a prototype and we don't, you never know what the final product's going to be like, it would walk into our top 10 that we've played this year so far, without question. I've heard Tally make noises playing this game and that I've never heard before. And I've never seen you so stressed playing a game.
Fun stress.
Yeah.
Most of the time. Yeah, I agree. I've absolutely loved playing this, and we are genuinely upset that we have to send this prototype on, I guess, to the next reviewer or send it back. And we've never been quite so upset at having to do that. I'm really just anticipating for the final product to come out, because I touched upon it in the review, but I'm just really addicted to it.
Yeah.
Just trying out all of the different things. I want to try and beat my own score. Can't manage to maybe beat Farrell, but at least I can try to beat my own score. And I just really feel like you could just play so many games of this and it would still be interesting time after time, because there's just so many different combos of things that you could do and try to game the system. It's just very, very expansive.
I think also you have all the characters, and these are all double-sided as well. So there's kind of a wealth of asymmetry to get you started, even if it's minor. And I just think that it's just such a double threat where the components are absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And the gameplay is also there. And, I think the time, if they just make a few little tweaks here and there, the time spent between, I guess, the campaign and when it's finalized and then goes into production, that can make the difference and make this, like a worldie, basically.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, you can just, you can't do everything in this game. So it also ties into why you just want to keep going back, basically, because it just gives you that feeling of one more resource and I could have done this and cascade a bunch of action. So yeah, I absolutely love it. Like you said, could be one of my favorite games I've actually ever played.
Yeah, it's honestly, I think just everything's interesting in it, and I think you touched upon it, but just everything is almost split between like two things what you want to do. And, you know, do you want to play the card that you have, or do you want to spend it for an action? Do you want to spend your resources on kind of building the roads and the tiles? Do you want to spend it on houses? You know, which skill tile do you want? Do you want one that gives you resources every round, or do you want one that gives you points every round? And it's just, there's so much crunch in this game and meaningful decisions and micro decisions that cascade that it's been, I mean, yeah, one of the best gaming experiences this year.
Yeah, there's just something about the theme for me as well. This very whimsical that just adds a lot to it, I think. And all of the citizen cards that have these kind of funny names on them. Crystal Cream Puff, just looking at one here. Christina Cranberry. It's just a joy to kind of pick up a card, even just for that element, and you know, read out the name and we read it out to each other.
We always read out the names to each other every time.
I just think that is really elevating it for me above, you know, standard like complex Euro.
Yeah,
is kind of the theming and the sort of slight humour in there.
Yeah. So I guess we'll just end it by saying the usual thing that this is a prototype. It's not the final product. We're commenting on this. Things can change. Things can change for the worse. Things can change for the better. So take everything what was said with a grain of salt, essentially. But this isn't one of the cases where, you know, we've been paid to promote this. We never get paid for anything we do, besides maybe a copy, like a final copy of the game for review purposes. And this is all our genuine feelings. And I think we generally have a reputation as being honest, but I just don't want this to be like Kickstarter hype.
We're overhyping it, yeah.
It's just, to us,
overhyping
it is that good, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to get the final product.
And with that, we will end. If you have any questions about it, please ask us. The campaign link will be down below, and that's starting in a few months, but you can go and sign up for a newsletter that will, or kind of a notification when it comes. And please consider subscribing if you found this helpful. And we really appreciate you watching, and go check out some of our actual reviews. See ya.
Bye.